And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. I am excited on a Tuesday. Roster cuts happening, contract extensions, and of course, starters are already getting nabbed. We are live in Denver, Colorado. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us a part of your lovely evening. We're live on all platforms known to man, Roku, IR Radio, and also on all social media platforms for you guys to like, subscribe, hit the bell button, keep you up to date on future and past episodes. Got a lot going on. It is fun time in Dallas with contract extensions, New England with question marks on their starters. I am all for it. And I am all excited for tonight's episode. So let's get right into it. So, of course, the talk of the day is that the Dallas Cowboys have finally spoken and they have announced the contract extension for their number one wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb. So it's what I've been talking about now for the last for the last month and a half or so. If you were the Dallas Cowboys, the best thing that you could possibly do was to extend the viable option that keeps your offense intact. And that's what CeeDee Lamb does. The other thing about CeeDee Lamb is that he has nearly identical wide receiver numbers closest to Justin Jefferson, which is also one of the great things. So Dallas has made their decision at least one of the three, and that for CeeDee Lamb to be a Dallas Cowboy for the next 4 years. $136 million, $38 million signing bonus, and that's where he's going to be making upwards of $34 million per year. So this was the right decision for the Dallas Cowboys to go with. Arguably, CeeDee Lamb, he's kept this offense very viable for the last few years. In fact, even when Dak, at one point, when he went down with Andy Dalton and with Cooper Rush, he still managed to put up very, very good numbers, which makes me excited about what the Cowboys will initially look like down the stretch. But I think the Cowboys are excited about it. I think in all honesty, with all of this, I think it's going to be fun. Most sources, they're kind of mixed about this whole deal, but in the end, Cowboys are excited. And that's really what it comes down to. And this was the right decision for the Cowboys to go through. And this is what also told you with what the Cowboys may potentially do. So yeah, 4 years, $136 million with $100 million guaranteed. He'll be the second highest paid receiver in the league, next to Justin Jefferson. But he is the surest wide receiver that you could think of on this roster. And it would have been a lot better had they had a number two option, because then it would be easier to figure out the Dak situation and more. And I'll get into that a little bit more here down the stretch of the show. But good for CeeDee Lamb, good for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm happy with it. And in the end, Dallas Cowboys fans should be happy about it too. I've spoken to a bunch of my closest colleagues, Law Nation, Jordan Tucker, and also my good friend Doug Brooks, who's been in the previous network with me. He's happy and excited about it, but we've even talked about it in the past. This is what you have to do. They've already addressed their tackles. They've already addressed a couple of other pieces. Now, granted, the defense might look a little bit different with Dan Quinn now going and coaching the Washington Commanders, but this is the most surefire thing that you could be happy with possible. So good for CeeDee Lamb. I think it'll be an interesting season for the Dallas Cowboys. Not sure how things might end up panning out for them, but at least they kept their viable wide receiver on this roster to now go and get their number 2 receiver potentially in the draft. That should be the next option for them. All right, so I want to talk New England here for a second. So news around New England, and what the initial thought was is that quarterback Jacoby Brissett was going to end up starting with his team. Now, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So Drake May is now going to end up being nabbed the starter for the New England Patriots. So he's coming into a situation that is not only forced upon, but we have a term that we use, which is called being thrown in the wolves. I think initially Drake May in this position, he's going to be thrown into the wolves. Now, he's going to come out one of 2 different types of quarterbacks. He's either going to come out as the quarterback, and this is where initially his comp really starts up, and that's Justin Herbert. I talked about this with Colby Cochran of Patriots Global. And the one thing about it is that Drake May, he's raw talented. He's a kid that obviously needs to learn a lot of this playbook. In fact, just retired head coach Nick Saban was at the Bears camp on Hard Knocks. And even he talked about this with Caleb Williams, where he started talking about rookie quarterbacks that are taken in at least the first round, that there is an awful lot of pressure on these quarterbacks' shoulders. But think about where we are right now in today's society. We're in a caffeinated society where we need things, we need results right now. We need, I need my morning coffee right now. I need my lunch, at 1 o'clock. I got to get it on DoorDash. I got to get it on, somewhere. I got to at least get, my packages from Amazon. So we're in a caffeinated society, and this is what it is. It's not Drake May's fault. It's neither of anybody, at least in this society, but this is what it's pivoted towards. But Nick Saban did bring out a point that it is very, very pressurizing for a rookie quarterback to end up starting and have to learn the playbook as fast as they do. They have to adjust to the NFL level as fast as they possibly can. And it's not that easy. In fact, when you go back to Justin Herbert in his rookie season, right? And this is how it started out initially. Tyrod Taylor was the starter in week 1. And they go and they nab a win against the Cincinnati Bengals against a rookie quarterback in Joe Burrow at that time. But besides that point, the other thing you also looked at was the week after, the next week, is that there was news that apparently Tyrod Taylor suffers a punctured lung from somebody on the medical staff. So, and that was hard. And then Justin Herbert, in this kind of situation, they had to play Kansas City in week 2. So he got initially thrown in the wolves, if you really think about it. But I find it kind of fascinating because in the end, Justin Herbert, when you saw it in week 2, getting thrown in, he didn't look that frantic. He looked very poised. He also ended up running in for a rushing touchdown and got a passing touchdown on top of it. And he looked great. And that's against Kansas City, against Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, in his rookie debut. So Drake May being thrown into the wolves, it's going to come out one of 2 things. But I think for New England, clearly, and here's the difference of both of them, is that New England has a bottom 5 wide receiver core. They do. You've got a rookie wide receiver in Jalen Polk that you're hoping really does pan out and could be a favorite weapon for Drake May in the future. Kendrick Bourne, he's going to be starting the year on the PUP list, so you're losing potentially that receiver. And then you also have Douglas. And so it's a bottom 5 receiver core. So Drake May has to work with literally nothing. But if he can turn nothing into something, then I think for the future, I do believe that Drake May could very much save the the Patriots at least a big one. I really, really do think that. Now, I'm curious as far as to what this may potentially look like, as far as fluidity of this offense, and then not to mention the kind of the coaching style that Gerard Mayo has. Now, again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. He could be one of two different types. He could either be that innovative coach that is not rigid, somebody that initially could very much help this roster build because it's clearly a rebuilding roster, and I see this team potentially winning 5 to 6 games. They'll be last in their division, but you know what? That's okay. I could be okay with that. But the other thing is you also have to consider is what if he's Belichick's shadow, which could also be a possibility too. So there's lots of question marks. But the funny thing is that I was listening to this, that if potentially, what if the New England Patriots, they don't pan out well, right? And they get the #1 overall pick. That could be added leverage for them moving forward. Here's the other thing. If Drake May succeeds, do you really make that risk of going and getting a quarterback like Carson Beck? Or are there potentially other teams that could use a quarterback like Carson Beck? The Giants, the Cowboys, if they can't get this right with CeeDee Lamb or with Dak Prescott, maybe with the Raiders. One of those teams is going to bite. And initially, that's added leverage for the Patriots. They could go and get assets. They could go and get really good players. And they could also draft some. They could also be right there as the top 10 pick, like in the top 10 spots in the first round. So it'll be interesting. But I think that could be very much added leverage for them. So, again, I think that the Patriots, they have a lot to really think about. But in the end, this is a rookie quarterback that is going to be starting in place of Jacoby Brissett, who suffered an injury, could be out for, I believe it was like 4 or 5 weeks at best. But, again, if Drake May can pan this out, that is going to be an interesting thing to talk about. But at the same time, maybe the Patriots have found their franchise quarterback. But it'll be interesting. And you also have to consider the fact, too, Drake May in the last 2 preseason games, he didn't even look that bad. So I think there's a lot you really have to consider, dissect, and I think you kind of have to take this thing with a grain of salt. I mean, what more could you possibly ask about this with Drake May? Rookie quarterback, has a lot thrown on his shoulders, not sure exactly how this will pan out. But I think if I looked at the line correctly when I broke down a lot of those matchups, and next week I have Jake's prime predictions for 2024. I'm excited about this big time because there's going to be a lot that's going to be talked about here. So if I look up the betting lines, I could probably tell you right here off the bat what that might look like. So looking back at it, let's see what we can find up on the NFL's betting line. And I'm pretty sure they're the underdogs. Yeah, so the Patriots now, they're actually plus 9.5. So honestly, and against that matchup against the Bengals, I might have to change some stuff up here. I think 9.5 just seems too rich to a team that's clearly rebuilding, but a team that's also starting with a rookie quarterback. So kind of something to think about here. So good stuff. So it's cutting week this week. 53-man roster are finally submitted. And I'm actually kind of curious about a couple things. But I'll be breaking all of those down because there are some notable names that have been that have been either starting the year on the IR or they ended up getting cut. So there's going to be some interesting stuff yet. So again, I think to this extent, I just look at this thing that, all 53 men rosters all over, it's going to be great. I think it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, all these rosters, this is what now counts, and this is what honestly goes into my prime predictions. It does. And funny enough, this will be Chase's first year on prime prediction, so I'm curious to see how this looks. But again, I just think with all the shifts that I saw here today, really going to be something to watch here. So keep in mind of that, and we shall see how the season ends up panning out. But I cannot wait for the NFL season to start anytime sooner. Really excited about that. And by the way, the Patriots, when looking at it at the quarterback situation, they released Bailey Zappi, so he's no longer on this roster. Kadarius Toney. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm also going to be talking a little bit about what's cooking up in Tennessee because they ended up making some big-time moves. All right, folks. Well, as we've said, as we're getting geared up for the NFL season, the NFL season is amongst us next week, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. It's all here, week one, and the best way to kick things off is by getting signed up at BetUS.com. BetUS is excited for the up-and-coming NFL season. Check out my latest videos on all my social medias, guys. It is going to be fun this year, considering prime predictions and also my inaugural Inferno 5. My 5 best betting lines in the NFL. And also for those of you at college football, I also inaugurated my Go for 3 game day. For those of you to keep you up into the action during college football season. Super excited for, what week 1 will be for college football. Week 0 was it was close. It was very, very close. But I'm excited this year, and BetUS has you covered up on it. $50 or more into your deposit, 125% matches with earnings of up to $2,500 in your first 3 deposits with 30 risk-free bets. With all the daily contests going on, you do not want to miss it. Gambling problem, call the number in your state, seek therapy and seek help today, and always make sure to gamble responsibly when you use BetUS. BetUS, where the NFL season begins.
Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
I'm just thinking so much about how the NFL season is really going to pan out this year with the 53-man roster. But there has been some notable cuts back here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. So, of course, as I mentioned, Bailey Zappi, he was released by the New England Patriots as of today. And then all of a sudden, the Texans, they released Noah Brown. I thought he was a pretty decent receiver, in my opinion. Clearly did not pan out. The Texans just have so many different options at wide receiver this year that it's almost nearly hard to kind of, keep up with this receiving core. Not to mention, you add in Stephon Diggs. So C.J. Stroud has a lot of weapons. So it's kind of hard and unfortunate. The Kansas City Chiefs, however, they've released Kadarius Toney. I just did not see him panning out. I just think, at the end of the day, Toney hasn't really panned out in the NFL. Can't really hold on to the football as much. No matter how many times Patrick Mahomes has thrown it to his chest, he's been dropping a lot of these quality passes, and it just hasn't looked good. So, and the Chiefs, they picked up Juju Smith-Schuster, by the way, adding him back into this roster. He's familiarized with it, and he's also won a Super Bowl with this roster. So out goes Toney, in comes Smith-Schuster. The Cardinals released Desmond Ridder. Clearly, Desmond Ridder, he's a backup, but couldn't pan out with this Cardinals roster. So all of these cuts, all of these potential roster moves, they all serve a significant purpose, because every roster in the NFL, and this happens all the time, it is extremely difficult to at least keep these rosters afloat, keeping these players afloat. Not only just that, but the fact of the matter is that when they come in, it is extremely difficult to have that roster spot. And there's also many surprises that comes out. And I think in the end, there's going to be many of those that probably will be on the move somewhere. Like I've just seen here in Denver talking about Tim Patrick, and now he's on the Detroit Lions. So they've cut some quality players that have come out of this roster, including Samaje Perine. So the Lions get another weapon with Tim Patrick. And to be honest with you, I've been hearing it from trustworthy sources that I've been told that this is kind of the thing that Brad Holmes, the GM, likes to do. He likes to bring in guys that have enough grit, guys that are coming back from, in this case, back-to-back significant injuries, and you want to get the best of them. And they're also on a cheaper deal. So initially, the Lions, what they're telling you is that we've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, we've got Jameson Williams, and now we have Tim Patrick. So the offense, I do believe, will still move the needle. From what I've seen from Ben Johnson this year, is incredible. And for the record, the Lions do play a lot of grit. That's normally how they are. But there's also been other interesting roster moves. The Chargers have, in fact, they released Donald Parham, one of their tall tight ends, who plays more of like a receiver, if you want to be honest. So lots of roster moves, lots of things to consider. And, with a bunch of these roster cuts, like Louis Cine, one of the former first-round picks in 22, he's got cut. Martavis Bryant, by the way, who was trying to make a comeback in the NFL, he's got cut. And then there's other ones like Tyler Higbee, he's on the PUP list. Allen Robinson got cut by the Giants. And even TJ Hawkinson is starting on the PUP list as well. So this is where multiple teams shaping up the rosters. Also, another thing to consider, Malik Willis from the Tennessee Titans, he's moving on to the Green Bay Packers, and he's going to be backing up Jordan Love. And another thing to also consider, and what I've been told, is that A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers, he's out for the season. That's what I'm told. I'm still getting more news on that, but they're saying it can very much be confirmed. He may be out for the season. So that could be kind of a crushing blow to the Green Bay Packers, to say the least. But all these guys, when they're shaped their rosters, it's all because they all want to be competitive. That's what the NFL is. It's a competitive league. So everybody's got their 53-man roster, at least almost everybody. But either way, this season, it's stacked. So all 53 of these guys, it's going to be fun to watch from here. But that's where things are going to get serious. So time to get myself tuned in for the NFL season. And with that, time for the news.
This is the Hot Press.
In Hot Press, initially I spoke about this before, but the Detroit Lions have signed ex-Bronco wide receiver Tim Patrick. He will be up on the practice squad, and they may eventually elevate him up and onto the roster. So what we were told, at least from the Broncos camp when they released Patrick here today, on behalf of everyone in the organization, I just can't say enough great things about the type of player, the person, Tim Patrick, while he has been a Bronco for the past 7 seasons. This was George Payton here today that mentioned about it. It was, they basically had to cut ties. So Tim Patrick, he suffered a torn ACL in the 22 season at camp, and then also on a torn Achilles tendon in 23, which is also what left it to be, which left him off this roster for Denver. And Denver has an interesting roster this year. They've got a lot of real good weapons I like. And so I think this will be interesting for the Detroit Lions moving forward, knowing that they got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. They also just released Donovan Peoples-Jones and Darius Fountain. So there's some interest there. But Tim Patrick, in 55 games of his career, he has 143 receptions, 2,009 yards, and 12 touchdown catches all throughout that span of his career. So he's not terrible. You know, he's looking for a roster spot, and I think, Detroit, they made the move, they made the call, and I think he'll be elevated into this roster at some point. But it's going to be quite the journey road here, but I think he can make it. So kind of interesting to consider. All right, so another wide receiver that is potentially looking for a new deal. The Cincinnati Bengals have been on the news radar. That star wide receiver Jamar Chase, and what has been confirmed is that the Bengals expect Jamar Chase to be playing in the team's season opener. Coach Zach Taylor ended up mentioning it, and a couple things that he ended up saying here for insights into Chase starting without the contract in place. This is what he mentioned. I think it gives you the visual of what it's going to look and feel like for us. It's been good to get him back in the mix the last couple of days. So Jamar Chase, the 3-time Pro Bowler, is waiting for a contract extension after just seeing CeeDee Lamb got his 4-year, $136 million contract with $100 million guaranteed with the Dallas Cowboys. Brandon Ayuk is waiting on a deal. I don't think he'll be upwards of that, but I'll be explaining that a little bit more here up on the show. But at least this is good news for the Bengals that Jamar Chase will be there in the home opener, in the season opener, I should say. He is a very viable offensive weapon, and certainly one that Joe Burrow knows you do not want to not get a contract done with Jamar Chase. I mean, that's initially what the focus is. And, the Bengals, they've had this on the back of their mind. They know exactly what's at stake and what to expect. So expect them at some point to really kind of make this move because in the end, it's going to be well worth it for them. I believe this to be. So I think it'll be well worth it in the end. But the Bengals know that they have a serious decision to make, but I think they will get a deal done at some point in this season. And finally, interesting stuff for the LA Rams and for Kyren Williams, their everyday running back. So this just came out, which I think will be interesting to see. But Sean McVay had announced that Rams running back Kyren Williams is set to return punts for the Rams this upcoming season. And Sean McVay had this to say: it's another opportunity for him to get touches and impact the game. And you feel comfortable with that because of the confidence in Blake Corum and Ronnie Rivers being able to spell him if need be. Last season, Kyren Williams averaged nearly 22 touches per game, ranked third in the NFL in rushing despite playing only 12 games, which is incredible. He had only missed 4 games in the middle of the season with a sprained ankle, and then a fifth for rest after the Rams had clinched the playoff spot. So interesting for Kyren Williams, and like Sean McVay said, it's another opportunity for them. But you know what? With these new added rules that the NFL has these days, kind of something to think about. But I think Kyren Williams, you have him on the fantasy roster, you better add him on. Because this guy's going to have much more touches than normal. And I also do think with adding in the new special teams deal, that is going to be one worth watching. And I also do think it's well worth the points for those that love playing fantasy football. Definitely something to think about for sure. But, again, I think it's another really good option. So, interesting though enough, I think the Rams, with everything that's been going through, not a lot of people really are feeling a lot of faith in the Rams for an odd reason. But certainly worth watching in the end. So I'm excited about it for the Rams this year. I have them as my team that I know for a fact are going to win more than 8 wins. That's the projection. So we shall see how this season really pans out for the LA Rams. And for that is the news.
This is the Hot Press.
All right, something to really consider. So the Dallas Cowboys at this point, now it's CeeDee Lamb, signed a new contract. What does this mean for Dak and for Micah Parsons? I'll be honest with you. I think they could definitely wait through this thing with Micah Parsons more than anybody else, in my opinion. But these are certainly things to really keep an eye on. And at the same time, it's well worth the thought. Now, Jerry Jones, he had mentioned before, because the whole thing, like this whole point with what the contract negotiations, what they've explained about this, and pretty interesting, I would say, is that the Cowboys, they are not worried about a contract with Dak or even with Micah. This was the same thing he said about CeeDee Lamb. They were not rushing a deal. A deal was eventually going to get done. And it kind of left a lot of Cowboy fans in a state of confusion. They weren't sure how things were really going to pan out. But the Cowboys, after the end of it, Cowboy fans finally felt confident that now they've got their guy. It really is something remarkable to kind of think about, because Jerry Jones always has had a way of doing some certain type of business. He really has. Sometimes it could either be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. Not a lot of people are sure about it. But the only sure thing that they've done is that they've given CeeDee Lamb that contract. But now Dak, and already in back-to-back seasons, has made the Cowboys 12-5. And this is with Mike McCarthy as your head coach. Now, initially, when McCarthy first came in, the Cowboys underachieved. That was clear. But the hard thing is I do believe that the Cowboys could still be a viable team. It's all Jerry Jones's brand at the end of the day. And I've heard this from many optimistic Cowboy fans and also Cowboy creators that I am very, very close with. So, however you handle this thing with Dak, and Dak even mentioned it himself, whatever the case may be, that's not in his mind right now. And for the record, he's okay with whatever the situation may be, whether he stays or he leaves. But some people have thought that, Jerry Jones, Dak's his guy. This was a guy that you were definitely going to end up looking at. And apparently there hasn't been a deal done. So the Cowboys, I'm confident that they'll figure this out. And that's all you really kind of have to feel. You got to feel some sort of upwards confidence here. But all I'm saying is I think that at the end of the day, I think, for Dak and what the state of the Cowboys are, the only thing I look at is that the Cowboys will have a viable roster. Okay? When you have CeeDee Lamb there, and you also addressed 2 tackles between Tyler Guyton and then Tyler Smith. You have some guys, and they're trying to keep this offensive line very relevant. And so that's what it comes down to. So it is a lot to think about. But then also you think about the defense, and with Micah Parsons. I know Micah would probably be knocking at the door at some point, but I think with Micah Parsons, the funny thing that you could look at is that he's not somebody that is a must-get guy to get a deal done. Not quite yet. So there's some very good speculations into this Cowboys thing. But I think in the end, they chose to sign CeeDee Lamb first, which was initially the same thought I thought of, and this was a good thought. So the Cowboys, I felt like, did the right thing. Get your receiver signed, because you would only be a CeeDee Lamb injury away from this thing going downhill really fast. So that's initially what it comes down to. But I think in the end, I think the Cowboys are confident. They feel like that they could get a deal done. But I got to tell you, it's going to be interesting watching the Cowboys and even watching the NFC East as a whole, though, this year. I'd be lying to you if I felt like that the NFC East, with as much as it goes through, that I could see the Washington Commanders trumping over the Dallas Cowboys this year. And I think that in the end, you've already got a contract in place with one, but I think in the end, you gotta think about what could potentially happen with Dak Prescott and what that offense will look like, because in the end, you got to consider getting a quarterback. If you really, really consider this. So Dallas has a lot to think about at the end. But I'm confident that the offense will stay relevant, but it depends on how things will pan out for the Cowboys moving forward. Going to take a quick break, but there still is some more speculation in the NFL that I cannot wait to get into right here on the Snake Sports Talk Show.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sportsway Network.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket, and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com, and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Back here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Such a fun show today. We got at least a couple interviews this week. Tomorrow and Thursday, it'll be fun. Brandon Owasco, we're going to have him locked on Blue Jays tomorrow. And then we got Jake Arthur locked on Colts on Thursday. Lot to really consider and think about. So I was, so while I was kind of peeping through a lot of these 53-man rosters for a lot of teams, I started to look at one team that a lot of people seem to have question marks on, and that's the LA Chargers. So looking at their 53-man roster, this is initially with what Jim Harbaugh loves. He loves going with physical play. You got to have the strongest offensive linemen in front. But then here's the other thing, though, too, because there were some cuts that were made and shaped up the roster. So initially, they are going with a 2-quarterback set, Justin Herbert and Easton Stick. To be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised that Easton Stick is still up on this roster after what I watched in preseason, but they have full confidence in him, and they have him as Justin Herbert's backup. Now, of course, the wide receiver room, and this is what's interesting to consider. The wide receiver room, there are 7 wide receivers on here to start the season. Josh Palmer, DJ Chark, Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey, Darius Davis, Simi Fehoko, and Brendan Rice. What does that tell you about this Chargers potential offense? My guess with the Chargers, and this is exactly with what Greg Roman does. Greg Roman will start the first half, not even just with that, even the first quadrant, with a spread type offense. Why? Because if you actually think about it in this league, because it's so pro offense, and I know a lot of people don't really think there's a whole lot of options here for the Chargers, but it's actually kind of funny because I was talking about this with somebody that I didn't even think about initially at the time. But this almost reminds me that with this roster, it kind of reminds me of 2019. Why do I think about that? Because it makes me think about the run with the Baltimore Ravens and with Lamar Jackson. That was his unanimous MVP season. Now, when you look at 2019, okay, here's what I'll throw at you. Because most people think that Justin Herbert doesn't even have any weapons. But go back to the 2019 season with the Baltimore Ravens, okay? This was their roster. And I can tell you right from top to bottom, offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, okay? The wide receivers that were on this roster was Miles Boykin, Willie Snead, Hollywood Brown, and that was initially it. You had Willie Snead that literally was elevated on this roster, and those were the wide receivers you had to deal with. And then you had Seth Roberts and Jaleel Scott, Chris Moore. I could go on with the rest of it. But those were your wide receivers. Why is this significant to me? Because Greg Roman has done this before. Okay, the team went 14-2. They won the division, and this was under John Harbaugh. You now have Jim Harbaugh as the coach, and at the same time, people are saying that, well, Justin Herbert ain't got no weapons, can't trust that. Yeah, but with Greg Roman, he's seen this before. And if you really, really look into this, okay, I'll give you some advanced stats from here. So on this, with Lamar Jackson, in his MVP year, because there were 15 games he played, okay, he was completing 265 of his throws, threw for about over 3,000 yards. But in the touchdown ratio, he had thrown for a bunch of touchdowns that year. And in rushing as well, Lamar Jackson had 7 rushing touchdowns. And you also had Mark Ingram, and he rushed for over 1,200 yards. But again, Lamar Jackson's winning 75% of his games. And in the end, very elusive, game controller. Oh, and by the way, Gus Edwards, who's also part of the Chargers now, he had 711 rushing yards with 2 touchdown scores. But of course, that's because they had Mark Ingram, a power back, a guy that could obviously bum rush defensive linemen. But then when you look at the wide receivers that he had, Marquise Brown had 358. He had 584 receiving yards. Willie Snead had 339. And Seth Roberts had at least 271. And then Miles Boykin had 198. So it is a spread offense type. But the other thing is, though, too, is that he loves his tight ends. Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, and Hayden Hurst. Oh, look at that. Another Raven, Hayden Hurst, on this roster. So Greg Roman likes familiarity. And that's just the same with Jim Harbaugh. Now, the thing to really consider is Greg Roman plays a lot of spread offense, which is the same thing that in 2019 the Baltimore Ravens did. And that's something to also consider, because Herbert is not the kind of quarterback that's going to stick to just one receiver. He's thrown to all of them. Okay, yes, he had Keenan Allen. Yes, he had Mike Williams. But he's thrown to all of his receivers. Jalen Guyton, Tyron Johnson, DeAndre Carter, Simi Fehoko, Josh Palmer. He's thrown to a lot of these receivers. This is not rocket science. And this is not new to Justin Herbert either, which only tells you one thing, is that the Chargers in spurts, and at least in quadrants or even in the first half, they are going to run the spread offense. And because they want to put points on the board first, they're going to run the ball and they'll put points on the board, which is kind of the thing you want to do. In an offensive-centric league, it's what you should do. And then what Greg Roman does a lot is that usually when you have a lead and you're trying to protect it, conserve the time, run down the clock, because in the end, you are playing in the same division as Patrick Mahomes. No question. And you are trying to disrupt the potential three-peat that the Chiefs are trying to do. So in the end, and Jim Harbaugh is notorious for this. He did this at his time in Stanford with Pete Carroll. He did this with his time with the Niners, with the Seahawks. But this is what's truthfully going to make a difference. So I just think that the Chargers, why I've said they could potentially go 10-7, is because that this was never anything new with Greg Roman. He's dealt with no-name receivers before Marquise Brown became a household name, and yet got Lamar Jackson to getting the Ravens to win 14-2, and also has had a great defense. So the Chargers have a lot to think about here. It's actually interesting. But I'm ending it with that. But one thing to really consider is that there's going to be a ton of rookies playing this year. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels. There's going to be a lot of these rookies that I am excited to watch this year. And it goes without saying that I think that, this rookie class, as I've said, could potentially be the best rookie class that we have seen in a long time, since 2020. And Drake, and like I said, if Drake May pans out, that'd be incredible. Bo Nix is my sleeper potentially of being offensive rookie of the year, because I just think with what we've seen from Bo Nix in camp and also on in preseason, I think the kid's going to be fun to watch. Just you wait. Just you watch. I'm here in Denver, and I listen to a lot of this stuff, and I've also watched a lot of film. This is not one of these quarterbacks that you don't think could possibly move the needle on the offense. I think he can. I also do think that with Bo Nix and what we've seen thus far, he's Sean Payton's type of quarterback. Jarrett Stidham was initially disappointed. Feels like that he could be a starter, in this league. I'm not sure about that. But it was pretty clear. The whole thing is that I do believe that the Broncos, their offense was not the problem. Okay, it was not. Their problem was that the defense, and in some ways, it just didn't end up working well. It did not end up panning well. That's the difference. Now, it just goes without saying that I think in the end, the Broncos have a much better look from what we've seen. And I think in the end, that Broncos team is going to very much turn a lot of heads. That team is certainly going to end up putting up very good numbers. And it's going to be 13 straight weeks of this thing. This offense is going to be battle tested. It's going to be battle driven. No question. But I think for the Broncos moving forward, I mean, they have a pretty much a good solid start, but then in the end, they are very much in football mode. And like a lot of these teams, there are going to be several challenges coming their way, but it will depend on how they react to a lot of them. And I think the Broncos will be okay with it. You know, and that's initially what the season will look like. There's going to be a lot of different surprises, you know, in the end. But I think it'll be pretty clear. The Broncos are going to end up turning a lot of heads. And I think if Bo Nix really does hit this off right, they're not even going to think about this Russell Wilson thing. They're going to have that way over and on the back of their minds. So, by the way, Florida State, this is what happens when you end up using that term travesty. So in that opener in Dublin, Ireland, and losing to Georgia Tech was just, it was a thriller. That was a great game, by the way, and I took the points in Georgia Tech because I just knew that with Georgia Tech's defense, and Dante Sell, who was on the show last week, we talked about it. Georgia Tech, they have a very tough defense. One that I think is really, really going to be interesting to watch. But it was clear. Georgia Tech played much better football than Florida State. And in the end, DJ Uiagalelei, he just could not get that offense rolling, which was a serious, serious problem. So I just think that throughout all of this, this is what it's come down to be. But I do think in the end, like Florida State's going to have a long season. They are going to have such a long season. So keep in mind that. Keep in mind, because there are going to be a lot of things that we'll have to break down initially, but I just think right now Florida State, and much like the rest of the ACC, there's not a whole lot of competition there. There's not a whole lot. So I just think Florida State, they kind of got caught with their pants down initially. I mean, it felt like they were kind of in control, but then all of a sudden, Georgia Tech, they took control of that game. That defense, and that linebacker, by the way, that linebacker is a freaking nature. Like that was fun to watch. And like I said, it was part of my go for three. And I was happy I won that game. I lost the one that was so close, which was SMU in Nevada. I went for the over of the 55.5, and I lost it by 53. So I was very close. You can give me that. But, in the end, I think Florida State, I mean, they started at 10. Now I think they're eventually going to drop. But, yeah, this Florida State program, I think to me is fool's gold. Sorry to say. I mean, the travesty was not letting Georgia in the college football playoff. That's a travesty. Okay? Another travesty is losing Jordan Travis throughout the entire remainder of the Seminole season. That's a travesty. I think that word is literally haunting the Florida State Seminoles for quite a while. But I just thought that was just not good. But it was a great thriller, but that is a hard pill to swallow for Florida State, all in all. All right, guys, that's going to do it here for me on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Appreciate all of you guys for joining us here. Ready to Wasco tomorrow. Locked On Blue Jays, Jake Arthur. Locked On Colts on Thursday. Excited about it. This Labor Day weekend, of course, too. Enjoy yourselves, because I know I'm going to be going off on vacation. Going to be traveling in an undisclosed location in Colorado. So I'm excited about that. Show sponsored by BetUS. $50 or more into your deposit. Match it up to 125% with up to $2,500 in earnings for your first 3 deposits and 30 risk-free bets. Give BetUS a try today. BetUS, where the game begins, and also on SeatGeek for your next up-and-coming event, whatever it may be. Next sporting event, live concert with your favorite artist. SeatGeek has you covered on the best seats in the house at the most affordable price, because we know inflation sucks. So give SeatGeek a try. Download it on your mobile device or Google Play and the App Store. And use promo code SnakeSports. That's promo code SnakeSports for $20 off of your first purchase. Snake Sports Talk Show. Jake Silva signing off. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.